Bum, 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 bum. Got a Vancouver Canuck on in this place.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, I'm just gonna assume everything's going great, Zaro.
It's going what?
Great.
Oh, everything should be. How's it
Mhm.
going for you?
Good man.
Yeah, miss you, bud.
At least I got my agents to keep me company now that you're gone. What's up,
Hey, I got myself an old camera here to show up today and not my avatar.
I just had a heart attack. I thought you cut your hair for a second.
No, not yet.
Hey, Alex. What's up, Hassan? Hey, David.
Morning.
We
Good
just,
Morning.
afternoon.
Is it still morning? Afternoon.
No, good
Afternoon.
it
afternoon.
was 1 minute ago,
Yeah.
Mr.
We missed it.
Technical. Yeah. We'll just hang out here for a sec, 5 minutes or so, chit chat, whatever, while we kind of get critical mass, and then you guys know the drill.
I am.
Chris, I'm going to have to skip
Go.
ethics today because I got my hospital appointment and I can't overlap the two,
Oh shit.
unfortunately.
Well, we do. I'll get the recording online by tomorrow, and
Okay, brilliant.
me and you can have a little debrief or whatever. The main thing I'd be is like, I'm gonna be pushing people on capstone projects today because we haven't talked much about it. So maybe me and you have a 5 minute talk about capstone projects.
Yeah, I'll be in Toronto tomorrow afternoon and I'll be available anytime after that. So, yeah.
You're gonna be a busy bee this next week.
Well, I've just been doing rate cards for a consultancy. So it's kind of, they've formally asked me to scale the company now. So, yeah, I'm
Damn.
now starting the scaling, which is fun.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I'm a panelist talking about real-time interfacing next week, and I'm running a panel on the next 5 years. So it's
I'm
good.
not shocked at all by anything you all say anymore. Like everyone's crushing it so hard, really. I'm like,
Well, I think this group
Whenever I
is
say
so
that,
cool.
yeah,
Sorry, Zara, go ahead.
I was gonna say whenever I say that, I immediately get shocked by something else. So
yeah,
All right.
and then Sev pops in, and then he'll rock all our worlds too. You
Mm.
know. So
exactly.
As I do have one aside, does anybody know how to do patents? So I need some help.
yeah, yeah. Khalil, not Khalil, Kayam Wakil.
Okay, cool. I will
You
reach
know what
out
I'm
to him.
talking about?
I don't, but I will make sure I do eventually.
I'm tagging you guys both right now.
Fantastic.
He has he's developed he has received 15 patents in the last year or so for various technologies through this agentic pipeline that he just barfs his ideas into.
Hmm.
Patent applications come out of it, and 15 of them have been approved. So he's at least a guy to
Oh,
talk to. Yeah.
Wow.
Sweet. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, because I was
That
talking to someone today and they showed me what they just patented, and it's kind of like that's about a fraction of what I've just developed. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
that is impressive, though. I wish I could hear his process. That's so
He'll
interesting.
share it with us all. It's all we got to do is ask. I don't know why I can't
Mm.
find him right now. Oh, Big Coast Brands. That's what it is.
That'd be so cool. That'd be so cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, of course.
And if I phase out, it's because I'm running on fumes right now.
I just,
My flight's going to be my
I'm on a
sleep.
meeting right now, but I'll talk to you later.
I am so interested in all of yours insights on the AI for all document.
We'll get into that. I might let Sev go first because he did some pretty good analysis yesterday using his tool.
Yeah, let's go.
One quick second. Who was the Cox? Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
I just tagged Zara and Kayam and Cox on Brain Trust, and he'll pop in eventually, and he'll be so tickled that we even remembered that he did that, and I'm sure he'll want to share. Hey Simon. Hey William.
Hey,
What's up, John? JT. Justin Timberlake. Hey, Sev. I heard a AI federal strategy dropped yesterday, and that you ran it through your tool.
yeah. So what we do is, sorry, I'm echoing. Hello.
John.
Okay.
Yes, thank
Perfect.
you.
Perfect. Um, so we built this framework, and what it gives us a distinct lens of looking at whether intelligent agent, organization, project, how well it fulfills the human needs versus what it takes in terms of resources, human need, additional deprivation of human needs. And we started kind of applying this lens to different projects. And so far, we've done three. Done the Telus Data Center in Vancouver. We've done the FIFA World Cup, and now we've done the AI for All strategy. And what it shows is basically it amplifies human fulfillment. And the premise of this framework was that flourishing society would focus on amplifying fulfillment. So this was no surprise for us. And we've made some recommendations. And if you're interested in those recommendations, you can go to economyofwisdom.org and read our blog. Everything, the document is right there. I also posted it in the BC members directory.
And I posted on this Zoom group chat. But would you get into like a little bit of the analysis at the bottom real quick?
Yeah, is there anything specific you want to hear, Chris? What questions that you have? Because you looked at it, and I'm just curious about your perspective. What would be valuable to people here?
Well, maybe we'll double back on it. Actually, I just thought you might have some high level stuff, like you've got your kind of like your different amplifier transmuter categories, and I was kind of surprised to see it ranking higher in some places than I thought, and different things and stuff. So I just thought you might have like a high level analysis of that.
Okay, yeah, I can go step by step. Like on physiological level, we got to consider the compute draw, 100 megawatts per center, 850 megawatts proposed by 2030, up to 2.3 gigawatts of energy. And whether it runs on a renewable grid, right? So the goal there to cut the operating emissions to 90%. And then there is the 200 million health AI missions, which AI mission. So there's $200 million available towards health that emits modest physiological fulfillment. That's why we kind of ranked it fairly low on the physiological scale. It draws energy, and then there is this $200 million figure that emits some physiological fulfillment of needs. On the safety, there is a $50 million Canadian AI Safety Institute. So that gives a moderate safety fulfillment.
Yeah, that was one of the areas that a lot of people I found were critiquing it about, especially kind of in light of like the Tumbler Ridge type thing and stuff. Is like there's a lot of money in here and a lot of talk for different things, but when it comes to the safety stuff, it 50 million compared to some of the other figures is pretty low.
Yeah, it's comparative, and we scored it fairly low as well. Now, where the calibration point will be, we can argue about that, and we can recalibrate based on additional data or feedback that we get. Yeah, so that there's
Well, speaking of arguing about it, it actually is the reason I'm asking Steph to do this, and the reason I find his framework useful right now is we all got ideas and opinions and biases about shit, but if you can come up with some sort of like universal metric standard for evaluating things, well, then you can have a real fight about whether you think you're scoring it right or if you're using the right math to adjudicate the right things, but you're not just like sharing your opinion at that point. You're reflecting on analysis and data or whatever. And so, like I'm not even like willing to pass judgment on your analysis, but saying that it's a useful framework for dialogue about the specifics.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Perspective. Our methodology is fully published, fully reproducible. The government can take it and run it themselves, and then we can have a conversation on coefficients in terms of how much to weigh different physiological needs. But
one of my favorite sections of your reports is at the bottom where you talk about like your assumptions and stuff, and you're like, we worked it all out based on this data, but if we wanted a real analysis, here's the data that we don't have that we would need provided in open data sets by the government or whatever. And the reason I like that section so much is clearly they're never going to give you that shit. Mm-hmm. So it's like that's the whole shell game in some ways. You're like, we're trying to do analysis and make some decisions around this stuff, but unless we actually have, and we've got a great framework in place, and these are our assumptions based on the data we got, but unless you fucking tell us the real stuff, we're all just, and it points out the fact that they probably won't share that documents, and therefore we're kind of flying blind more or less, or making educated guesses based on methodologies. But yeah.
Yeah, and also what we found is interesting is in terms of agency of underrepresented population. We can take the agency like the indigenous values template, where we're talking about indigenous values and incorporating them in overall strategy, which is fantastic. This is a major breakthrough. However, the other marginalized populations are treated as the sources of tools or frameworks or policies recipients, meaning what about their values, right? So, what one of the things that came up is, well, let's take values from different and wide variety of sampling populations and have that conversation because the national strategy should be representative of everyone who lives in that particular nation.
Yeah.
So that's and I feel like the indigenous template they took the lead on that, and they could lead sort of the propagation of that template through different communities. I think there's a
Yeah.
real opportunity here.
Thank you, Sev. I'm going to switch gears for a quick sec. Alex, thanks for being here. And I know you may have got a drop, but we had 4 events this week, including a really great AI Ethical Futures Lab at Parker Street Studios with about 40 people, where we talked about this stuff and pretty in depth. Alex, would you give us any reflections or notes from the Futures Lab the other night?
Oh boy, hi.
Hi.
Well, we talked about briefly about C22 and also the new legislation, pillars, 6 pillars, the 6 pillars of the government AI plan. Yeah, and also we went into depth about talking about like maybe building a coalition of sorts, which I thought was really interesting. I actually tried to get my guild to maybe take a little bite of, a little nibble of something like that coming on board, although they are resistant to everything, unfortunately. So, yeah, you want to expand on that?
I mean,
that
that's
I
a,
have?
a bit of a good start. David, you were there too. You got anything to add? David Cox in this case.
I love the way you chaired it. It was good. The transcript was fantastic, I think. So I picked up a lot of the conversation, which I sent to Chris. No, the discussion was good. A lot of really good thought leads there, and I love the way Jackie, Catherine, and all that lot were passionate about what they were doing, and I'm glad to see that passion here.
Fuck yeah, it
Because
was
we're
a
not
heavy
going to get the
hitter.
grassroots unless we have it. So, I mean, it was
Jennifer-
nice just to sit there quietly and listen.
Yeah, Jennifer Archer was there, who's a Canadian leading water rights activist who has an interest in AI. She had a lot to share. Dr. Jackie Steele was there, feminist AI ethicist from Japan. There was a lot of great conversation. Sev was there and contributed a lot. So I had a great night the other night, diving deep on that. Zaro, what's on your mind about this stuff since you brought it up?
I don't know, man. Like there's so many different points and angles, and there's so many weirdly upset people about the most random, picks within the thing.
You know
So
why I think that is? I think that what we're really witnessing is the highest level people in Canada jockey for power and money. They want to know who is going to receive and distribute those either billions or hundreds of millions. So a lot of us commentators and like grassroots people and even like we're all along for the ride. Everyone's just kind of like lining up in order to see that if it's going to be, the Canadian Council of Innovators that gets the $500 million to invest, or if it's going to be a mix of Innovate BC and, something else or whatever. So it's like what we're watching is all these gangs jockey for position to be the intermediary between the federal funding and the startups, essentially, and the ecosystem and the training. Like, who is the right person to receive the $500 million worth of adoption, upskilling money, et cetera? Is it the Center for Digital Media? Is it BCAI in our programs? Is it, and so I think that's what we're really seeing is like a clamoring for positioning as it comes to the allocation of the funds. Because nothing happened yesterday, but what will happen is big pools of money will start getting shifted out of federal budgets into provincial budgets or into federal regional funding arms, and then their programs will start to roll out. So soon we'll be able to see, we'll hear some announcement that like Innovate gets access to distribute 100 million or something, and they'll roll out their way of distributing that money or something like that. So that's really, I think, what we're in the thick of right now. And it's hard to know unless you're operating at one of those high levels, how is this going to affect my life or company or Canada? Because they're sort of playing a different game than most of us get exposed to. I get glimpses into it because of this new thing that we formed, but that's my real analysis of what's going on.
I think you're spot on, and to me, there's still a level of A/B testing somehow politically, even because Canada is in such a position that it can actually test stuff that is a little bit different, that goes against the grain, and those things are being called out, like the indigenous focus that you guys mentioned and everything else. So there's a lot of like, let's see what the public will lean to, and then we can double down. Like that's what I felt from reading it all, because it's like it's a little bit everywhere as well, right? Like it's what you said. Like it's trying to cater to so many different specific parts of a network that it's almost generic. But at the same time, it tests these empathy-led, moral leaning, topics as well. So I'm just interested to see like what everybody thinks about it, where we're siding with it. Like it's good that we're talking about it. It's good that it's already on that level. It's good that we are taking a position, but not so sure on what that means. Especially,
I think one of the things that it means is, I think agency and our lack of agency many times is like a pretty important thing. And so I think that those of us that have chosen to engage in these details will feel a greater sense of agency as we move into these futures, because we understand the power players and the money and the flows and this, like, so I don't even know that some of the biggest impacts might be tangible in terms of dollars, but they might be empowering in that they put us into conversations where these decisions are made, and we experience either individually or collectively a greater sense of agency in the future. Like it's not just happening to us. That's like one of the intrinsic benefits, I believe, of participating in a process like this or whatever. So has anyone else got anything they want to add, Chris?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I didn't have a chance to fully, debrief on that announcement yesterday, but I can imagine the amount of political divide is definitely growing, right? I saw like there was protests around no data centers. I'm assuming everyone here is pro AI. I mean, they might have their misgivings, maybe some concerns, but there is definitely a population that thinks that this is almost on a religious tones level, that this is Satan. And I think we talked about that through some of the chat, right? So you can imagine once you start talking religion and AI, like now it gets crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see, like, it's going to run the whole political spectrum. It seems like, so some will say there should be no funding on AI, it should be clamped down, and others say, I'm more pro AI. I say business, like promote it, business, let us be the AI center of excellence countrywide, and then everything in between, right? So
Juliana, I want to throw to you in 1 second, but I just wanted to unpack one little thing about these protests first that I've learned in like kind of last 36 hours or something like that. So there was that AI data center protest that I went and reported from, and there's a follow-on protest coming up on June 27th at 1 p.m. However, I've noticed a significant change in messaging around it, and it's one that's making it more difficult for me to find my middle ground in terms of participation. So at the first one, the AI data center one, it was definitely an anti-AI data center protest. There was many people there that had other messages as well, like no AI, AI is brain rot, you stole all my content and trained your models on it without. So those are all non-data center anti-AI arguments and positions, and they were represented in signs and chants and stuff like that. But the main focus of the rally was data centers in Vancouver. The June 27th one is different. It's more like kind of what Chris described. It's an anti-AI protest. It's anti-brain rot. anti-copyright, anti-buy. It's all the other things that aren't just the specifics of like, is this a good data center plan or a bad data center plan, which is what the last protest was. This one's like more of like a yo fuck AI. And so I am still going to go because there's allies to be found there. I was explaining this to somebody last night, and I was like, out of these resistance networks, future alternatives develop. So Seven and I got in a 1 second fight the other night where we were talking about staying at the table versus creating new just systems. And, clearly it's like a both thing. Well, I would argue that the work that I'm doing on one hand with Innovate and Minister Solomon and all the rest is fighting for and claiming a seat at the table inside of a potentially unjust system without reform, whereas other people are out there working. And inside these resistance networks, I believe, is where truly novel visions of technology in the future arise. And so I believe there's many allies to be made there and a lot of great ideas and technology that comes out of those things, even if I'm not fully aligned with their talking points or something like that. So that's a little bit of like why I think it's kind of important to
remember last week when I said, bro, the woke and the pope are together. Like that's substantial. Like that's the spiritual war part of the AI hype that we were talking about last week. Yeah, that will change the sentiment, but not only the sentiment, but like it's what you said. Like we have to make sure that it's not divided. We have to maintain a big bubble, not dividing bubbles, so that we can actually find the solutions. Because I don't know, man. Like I feel like the last few weeks kind of took the democracy away of AI, like the very democratic thing that I thought AI was bringing. The costs are coming up, the pressure is coming up. Not everybody can sit down at a computer and do anything they want anymore with like $20.
Yeah.
That time is gone now. Like
Yeah.
you're trying to use it on your company, and like the Uber COO message is clear, man. Like we are spending way too much for
David, I'm going to
incremental.
throw to Juliana first, because I haven't forgotten, and then I'll come to you as well. But Zara, one last thing I want to say on that is like maybe the most tone deaf thing of all of the things that happened this week is that the people that are commenting on the AI strategy, and whether they like it or don't like it, as they jockey for position around money and power, all of them have their head in the sand that there's any resistance taking place at all out there. And these resistance people are sort of like doing their protests and their activism sort of independent of the fact that they just dropped a multi-billion-dollar strategy this week. That they're like, it's one thing to be like, yo, no AI, but it's like, yeah, but this week we just made like a major collective national contribution to it. So like, what do you, so anyway, that's danger to me, is like this one group of people getting really far down the road of, yeah, rah, rah, pom pom. And this other group getting rah, rah, pitchfork all the way down. And they're not being interconnected tendrils between them with their conversations. That's setting yourself up for schism or something like that, so it would have increased some of the credibility for me if either Carney or Solomon would have acknowledged that there are thousands of Canadians getting together across Canada on their weekends to take to the streets. This is the context that they launched their plan into. So some sort of squaring of that circle probably needs to happen for it to be like real and truthful and grounded and authentic and stuff like that. So, Juliana.
Yeah, this is a fantastic, fascinating conversation. I haven't been part of the protests, but have been really grateful for the reports. So I've been abreast of these things. I had a couple of reflections because this conversation is reminding me of a couple of like non-AI parts of my life that like the old is very much present here. So things like from my work with nonprofits, working with communities that were like in like immigration rights space, right? Like you have like these different groups, interest groups, and you'd have folks very, very far apart on issues, and folks who were like really impacted, by policies, by budget, decisions made at very high levels, kind of sometimes feeling very disempowered, feeling like voices are not heard, and trying to navigate that space and trying to influence the development of things in various ways. So anyway, this is everything that's going on with the protests and so forth is just kind of bringing those memories back for me, and thinking about what were the skills involved in community building, regardless of what one's interests or take were on things. Like it's such a complex space, and so like the folks who are kind of at the ground level, just living a daily life reality, are so far in some ways from the machinations and ways that folks in the seats of power do things, that sometimes like the folks like at the grassroots level can just feel like it's just overwhelming. You know what I mean? And I sometimes feel this, right? Like I want to be able to use AI in positive ways in my personal life and my groups, my communities, my work, but sometimes I feel disempowered. Like how can we possibly have the time, energy to engage, to understand, let alone to kind of impact things at that level. So it's just it's a reflection. Yeah.
I've noticed that too, Juliana, that as we layer like one meta level of technology upon another meta level of technology, that this gap between like practical computer use and the way like Zaro's thinking about agentic orchestration and token management, blah, blah. You have to like, there's so many prerequisites to join the conversation that Zaro's having, that if you are starting from zero, it does probably seem like impenetrable or very far away, because you have to like you got to like sharpen your axe for 6 months before you're even able to like go have a fucking intelligent conversation about some of this stuff, or whatever. And it's
yeah. And I feel like there again is where community is so important, because to build the skills to like actually be able to understand and contribute, it takes real effort and work, and so community organizations are really important in my experience.
That's
to
like
that
the measuring
skill building and that movement building. So
that's like the measuring. That's like the personal measuring stick that I use for every speaker we put on stage, or anything that comes out from us to the world, is like, does this ratchet up the collective knowledge of our whole crew? Like, are we actually gaining more capabilities as a collective by me putting this person out there, by me running this program or whatever? I'm trying to like give us 2% character point upgrade in that area. And if we stack enough of those things upon each other as a group, we all move quickly in a direction. As opposed to just some individuals. So that's definitely how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me see, there was just a couple more thoughts that came to my head. One was just like, again, connects to that skill building piece. I've been thinking about evaluation. Like we're talking about like data sources and analysis and like really wrapping our heads around things. And I've just been like thinking about evaluation just in my work life, just doing some interview analysis and thinking, okay, like what does AI enable here now, and where do I need to be careful, and so forth. And it's just like working with data and making sure like we're actually coming to valid conclusions. It's like AI did not just like relieve us of responsibility. In some ways, we need to be even more aware and attuned and like have those solid skills and being able to draw correct conclusions from data. So that's part of the community and skill building piece, is just like just like, and this is all over in the summary of just like rational thought, right? We're trying to think rationally, we're trying to think analytically. But one of our speakers had talked about like when folks are at a level of discourse that is around like a religious pitch, right? That is by nature again kind of at odds with the rational, fact-based, analytical. So that's just important to be aware of. If that's like one important strand. The religious pitch is present on both sides, right? On the anti and also on the pro. I've heard folks describing what the tenor of discussion is when they're around some folks, and it is like this kind of savior mentality, or some kind of kind of a So just some reflections there. But really, I'll just turn it over.
David.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. So basically, I think for me, it's when you say you go down to meet the protesters. I met a anti-vaxxer yesterday in the queue at IKEA last night, and she was talking to Natasha. I left because I was finding what she was saying hard, and I came back and she was still going full scale into we should assassinate Fauci type attitude. And I just turned around to her and just said, I disagree totally what you're saying. Shut down the conversation, but it would be nice to work out how to engage and work out where she gets her information from. Because when I asked her where she got her sources from, it was just do your own research. And if you search those terms that she used, you're going to hit what she said. That's the problem. And so how do we, going back to the data center people, there is value to a data center. There's value to AI. There's also disadvantages. So how do we put that information? And this is where the government really should be helping, but unfortunately they don't necessarily have the details to do this. And this is where our group can be very helpful, is what are the benefits and what are the risks of AI? And then this is how you counter the risks. Because if you watch some of the kids, like a friend of mine he's asked me to help his kids start using AI because he refuses to do it. He's a software developer. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to pollute his brain. And it's sort of, okay, so how do we gateway him into AI? And it's almost like when I was writing this stuff back to him, I was sort of like a drug dealer. So start on this little bit of hash, come buy it from me every week. I'll push you up to a better drug afterwards. And eventually get him hooked on AI. It's kind of, do I want to do that? Or do I want to just work out why is he resistant and how can he defeat his own thing? But that requires dialogue. It requires introspection on the person and both sides of the conversation, or all three sides or four sides where the conversation is. And so I'm
That's
amazed
the
that you
most
can
insightful
do
thing you've
that,
ever
Chris.
said on one of these calls.
Oh, thank you. But how do you do, Chris? I mean, how could you? It'd be nice to learn how to do that.
I think I
How do you
choose
manage?
option B. I think I usually choose option B. I don't sit there and give them tools in the drug dealer path. I'm like, let's unpack your reservations. It's not like there's a big green make software button, but would it be useful to have it doing code reviews for you? Maybe that's a place to start. Or maybe it's like everyone hates writing documentation. Are you willing to let it write some documentation while you keep programming or whatever? Like, what's your rub and friction exactly? Like, let's talk. I do the psychology approach usually more so than the like tools and code review. Here's samples and whatever. And like,
Yeah, I come from a narcissist family where the attitude is beat them up until they give in.
right.
And I'm recovering from that now, learning how to actually be. This is why running panels at big data conferences with audiences getting contentious about things is actually really good practice, because I've got to remain calm no matter how angry everybody else gets around me. So we're going to see what happens next week when we get into AI strategy.
I've seen you flustered but never angry.
Yeah, I used to be very calm in a lot of ways. When I was in Africa, one of the guys said, David never gets flustered. So my ex turned around and said, just watch this. We pulled into a car park and she just said, there's a car park space over there. And I went into immediate panic mode, almost hit about 3 cars just because she pointed out a parking space that I hadn't seen. And it just threw me into a loop. Said, yeah, David and Carl Carp, don't let him go anywhere nearby. And it's a full panic mode.
Juliana,
slowly got calmer about that. So yeah.
Juliana, I'll throw back to you, but let me grab Ian's voice here real quick. He made an insightful comment on the chat.
Oh, which one? Well, the one thing
I just felt like you might have something to add here.
Yeah, well, I will say that when he was talking, it did occur to me that, I do feel there is a huge difference, though, in anti-AI versus anti-vax, and it's not really too fair to conflate them, because anti-vax is just anti-sciencism, right? And conspiracy theories. But there are legitimate, huge structural problems with the way AI is being messaged, the way it's being rolled out, and the goals of big AI. It's one of the things that I'm actually finding is a big problem, because the drug dealer is a very good thing, because it's coming to a reckoning, frankly, that I'm having to figure out how to navigate, where, the Silicon Valley, and I'm going to name that, is poisoning the well so bad that even if you're a small humanist AI company that does things differently, that takes a different approach, it will eventually it'll start to become a point where you're just the most ethical drug dealer. You know what I mean? There will be no good AI company. And one of the things is, I did an article about it, the insane level of build out, right? We it's it is destroying the environment and everything, and it's for a speculative future that they have a dream of creating a god machine functionally. Okay, and they're willing to basically let the chips fall where they may. We'll deal with I think their theory, honestly, is that we will destroy the world to build this, and then the god machine will figure out how to solve all the problems we caused by building it. That's an incredibly toxic brew. And it's all based on this thing where it's the assumption that more like a 10 terabyte model will somehow come together and be AGI, right? And it's a very AI mainframe thinking on the eve of the desktop computer revolution, because Moore's law is stalking AI. There will come a point where, if you have structure and organization and software, you won't need a 10 terabyte model to run something as competent as Claude. You'll need something like 70 megabytes, a billion parameters. And that'll be able to be run on like an iMac, right? So these gigantic data centers that they're trying to build that take, and I did the math, Okay, they're thinking of creating models that will, one training run for one of their gigantic 2030 models is going to take the cumulative output of 4 nuclear power plants 24/7. Okay, that's insane. And so there becomes a problem with that, and we have to navigate it. And one of the things is I see a lot of self-defeatist attitudes toward this new announcement from Canada. Like, we could never catch up. We're going to use hyperscale. We don't have the scale. We don't have the brain drain. We don't have the capital. And I'm saying, well, it keeps assuming that the hyperscale. So one of the things I think is a real thing that BC has an opportunity to do more than any other part of Canada is that you can say, look, the reality is Canada cannot nor should not compete on the hyperscale paradigm. That battle is lost. You cannot catch up. You cannot have the amount of capital that they can ever have. But the idea is don't compete on the last paradigm. Compete on the next paradigm. Don't compete to be the biggest IBM mainframe manufacturer. Compete to be the center of the next homebrew computer club and to start up the next Apples where you can go small, you can go structurally efficient, things like, and I'm going to shout out Martin, but also myself, like Emily and Robeson, where it's all about these structures. So I think a lot of the self-defeatism is assuming that we're going to need $100 billion investments from venture capital vultures in order to catch up. But that's because the industry has lost the ability to think outside the box. They're so invested in the hyperscale paradigm that there's nothing else. I was going to ask, is there any kind of working group? Now, unfortunately, I'm here in Florida taking care of my parents. I can't be there right now, even though the business is there. Is there any kind of, I can't lead it or create it, but is there any kind of working group that works on any of these types of elements within BCAI that I can get involved with?
Which kind of elements in particular? I mean, there's like a government relations working group.
Government relations, this kind of like developing BC is like trying not to just out Silicon Valley, because this is where I think that like, and trying to advocate. I know that when we were in our last meetup that I went to, one of the ministers was very interested in the idea of on-device small AI. Because I think one of the defeatism is in Canada right now is this idea that we can never compete with them on the hyperscale paradigm. And I'm going to say they're right. We cannot. So, but that's the assumption that's the only thing that exists.
In my own mind, I think of our whole organization as kind of that working group, of which this is like one of our like weekly things, but our ethical futures lab was pointed at it the other night, and like, I mean, and there's the government relations channel kind of supporting the tactical work that comes out of the strategic kind of thinking and stuff, but maybe not as specifically as you're asking, but I would like to think that somewhat our whole collective is pointed in that direction.
Right, the ethical futures. But I was wondering if there was any kind of but as you said, ethical futures, maybe. Is there any kind of like committee, I guess you could almost call it, that's really focused on like maybe waking up the fact that Canada doesn't have to follow the late stage capitalist neoliberal, let's try to become Silicon Valley 2 route, and also sort of addressing some of the problems where the vision for AI of this very like, let's replace everybody, let's have CEOs sitting in a room with like servers, and that's their vision of how AI should like be deployed. That maybe like some kind of anti-messaging where we should really try to start developing an organized future that like the government of BC, for instance, buys into.
Right. Ian, I think you are, here's your gold star. I think you're right on point or whatever. The one thing that I might want to challenge you on is, like, didn't you sort of hear that so the whole premise is there should be an option between a hyperscaler and a hegemon, and Canada intends to forge that middle path with Australia, Finland, Germany, and UAE and those other middle powers. Like, isn't that what you heard?
I did hear that.
We're not Silicon Valley hyperscaler. We can't compete in that model. We're not China. We're not America. So we're going to form this middle path.
I feel that the government did that. I feel that there was some nods to that. What I'm more addressing is I've seen a lot of reactions to it. And a lot of that is, I would probably say yes, from like investors and VCs. And I see a lot of these guys going like, it's kind of like Canada self-defeat doomer. It's like sort of like this idea of like, this will never work because we just can never do it and we're not good enough. And I notice a lot of this defeatism, not even so much the government. I feel the government is doing what they're trying to do is good. Although I do notice there's a little bit of a let's try to attract gigantic capital. But within sort of the AI community, not us, but like the AI sort of investment
Yeah.
community in Canada, there's sort of a panic. I mean, I even see Cohere, I feel, did a little bit of a panic and started trying to Silicon Valleyize themselves.
Well, that's interesting. I was going to ask about that next. It was really it's like one thing I don't know about that I thought that you guys might be able to help with. Like I know Cohere and I know a lot about him, but when Carney stands up there and says, "Don't you guys know that we're one of only 4 nations with a sovereign national built AI?" That's bullshit, right? Like that's not true. Cohere's not really truly a foundational Canadian
They
developed.
do build models. I mean, I'm building my stack on Cohere when I can because their R plus is extremely good. I'll just go into a real quick technical dip. Is that I've done testing. In fact, one of the things I like about Cohere is they're very reasoning forward with a lot of opinionated. And there's things where, like, if you give it the right architecture, a smaller model like Cohere R plus that is sparse activation, very low power, can run on 2 GPUs. You can actually make it so that it destroys Claude. Okay. And there's always there. And they are a sovereign developer. One of the things is, and they were also a very real unicorn in that they were one of the only model makers who were making either frontier or near frontier that actually was operating in the black. They weren't just hemorrhaging money. Okay. But one of the things they did is they took huge rounds recently because I think they're starting to panic that they don't have big, gigantic frontier terabyte models. And they started bringing in a lot of Silicon Valley leadership. And so what happens is they're starting to Silicon Valleyize themselves. When I was first talking to them, you could just get on their Discord and you could talk to some of their top guys, helping you like figuring out what the capabilities of the model are. They don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't most of their infrastructure live in Detroit?
Their infrastructure, a lot of it does live in Detroit, but one of the key things is they're very focused on you deploy your own model. So they're the enterprise on-site deployment. So in other words, if I do a data center in BC, which when I get the scratch and my company can actually do its own infrastructure, that's what I plan to do because it's all hydro. They can actually deploy an R model into, let's say, a data center that lives in thing. And like something that is the cost less than the cost of streaming Netflix, you can serve like 10,000 users,
Wow.
even from a data center. So they can do it. And the reason you think of it that way is they are very on-site deployment oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be sovereign in the sense of if people start installing their models in sovereign areas within Canada, then you would have that. I think
Let me ask you one more question. Let me ask you one more question, then I'm sort of eager to move on. But I've actually enjoyed this being more of a conversation than around the room today. But as individual users, experimenters, and deployers of these tools, are we doing ourselves or Canada a favor if we choose Cohere as one of our models that we are building stuff? Or is there some sort of collective benefit in terms of its own success to guys like me trying to find places to plug into that stack?
Well, as I said, I think it's because they're small enough they can be deployed locally if you get to the point where you can put them in your own data centers. And as I said, since we're like heavily hydro, number two is they are very efficient. I will say that absent cognitive architecture or some kind of structural, they're a little bit uncapable, but they take to the capability of middleware like a sponge. Okay. So I think there is certain advantage. I think you could wean yourself off, but this is the one thing is we have to really exit this theory that in order to get the capability of Claude Code, you're going to need something that like burns the energy of a small city to achieve it. I think people like Martin, people like me, I'm sure there are people, a lot of people in BC are developing technical solutions that means that it will break this idea that bigger equals better.
Right.
Versus more structured will equal better.
I appreciate your participation in these calls, especially since you're down there with your folks in Florida and stuff. And especially today, I'm glad I called on you. You've added a lot of technical depth to this talk. Juliana.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a reflection kind of from my perspective here at UBC and some of the conversations we're having. And, but most immediately, Chris, you sent me a Blue Sky thread yesterday that I think was relevant in part to this. So this was reflections from a UBC professor whose department had organized a conference on pedagogy that they do every year. And this year's keynote was around the integration of AI into their practices. And the faculty member was very disappointed and disheartened by what he had heard. And so he had a long thread describing that. And one of his questions, and he asked that question in the session, raised a point that I haven't heard so much talking with faculty, but we might be hearing more. It connects to this idea of costs, rising costs. And the question was, what will happen if academics fully integrate AI into their curricula while the technology is still being subsidized by venture capital, who eventually will pay when the price arrives? And of course, this question makes the assumption that the way that AI is being integrated is using like the state of the art models. It's, I just saw that one of my alma maters has gone all in on Claude, is getting Claude subscriptions for faculty, staff, students all across the board. And so with that kind of model, obviously, like that question around price is very salient. Like, will those prices rise? What does happen as far as things go on? The model that we're taking includes a really, at UBC, includes a really large and important piece around locally hosted, LLMs. And so I think it's like raising awareness of like the various choices around the deployment options, around the size of the model and their various capabilities is really important. It's like a skill building issue, awareness building. There's a huge educational piece around that. So I feel really happy that we're doing this approach, and I hope we can continue to get the word out about it. But I also hear that we had a question from a faculty member at a session this week, and they said, "Well, so what model do you recommend we use?" And the answer in the session was, "Well, use the biggest one you can, because it's going to be the biggest. So if you can, go ahead and use the Claude." So I think that there's still work for us to do too, to articulate this in a more nuanced way, right? Like it is a huge skill building area, even for me, even for us around here on the table.
I think that's a funny answer, but I personally resist that question every time because I feel like it's malformed. It's like, doesn't even matter. Just go pick one and start messing. It's more like how quickly can you start messing with any model, not which one is the best or most perfect, because I think it's about those epiphanies and educational and skill unlocks. And you might just decide 3 days into whatever you chose that that's not the right one, but you'll be able to articulate why you're moving to a different one or something like that. So like, I know if you're doing enterprise software evaluation for a whole university over a 10-year contract, all of a sudden the cost factor becomes a really big decision. But I'd be like, hey guys, our IT department's still figuring out what model they're going to deploy for the whole organization. So I bought you all Claude subscriptions for the next couple months while we figure it out, type thing. Like I wouldn't want to waste 2 months of not engaging with the moment to have the best or cheapest or most capable or whatever model.
Sure, absolutely. In all ways, like flexibility is a really, really important way of being at this time, right? Experimentation, flexibility, both in mind and in our practices. So, yeah.
Anyone else got something they want to add to this dialogue?
Yeah, I do, if it's okay.
Thank you. I was going to call on you next for intro anyway, so happy to see you, Dave.
Yeah, good to see everyone. I just got 2 things I want to mention. They're both to do with microlearning.
Both to do with micro what?
Microlearning.
Microlearning.
Yes. So about a month ago, we launched a new version of the naloxone training app for the BC CDC, which is for training at home kits with naloxone, as well as for frontline workers to take the training. So many organizations, schools, and frontline organizations down here in the downtown east side use this app to microlearning within other. And basically the numbers are like this. I can't tell you the exact numbers because I'm not allowed because of the privacy.
David, I really want to hear what you have to say. And it's ever just slightly so mumbly. Would you just lean in a little bit towards your microphone and keep talking? Because I really want to hear you.
I just want to say that we launched a naloxone training app about a month ago. And so far, that app has trained over 2,000 people in British Columbia, which is amazing because on average, those users, they complete the training in under about 6 minutes on average. which is great. And then they get a certificate at the end. Perfect. And it's really great because it's a progressive web app, so they can install it if they want, and then they can have the push notifications enabled, and then that allows them to get drug alerts from the drug alerts system that we've done. So that's one thing. So that's a FOIPA level compliance, app microlearning in the wild, which is great because I needed that credibility. Because on the other hand, I'm also in a school pilot right now for North Vancouver School District, and for the last since probably October, I've been wanting to get AI safety microlearning into the school as part of the actual app itself. And so the way to do that was to just sit back and try to find the opportunity to do that. Because if you try to force that down somebody's throat, it's not going to work, right? So, so I've been looking for opportunities, and a big part of that was coming out of the very first pilot. We found that students were having this problem of like misidentification of us and ChatGPT, and that was very big. Like that's a very big thing. So what I did is I talked to Jai Jwal, who is at Capilano U, and he has a UX class. He was teaching, and he's doing a series of lectures. So he asked me to come, and I suggested that this is a UX problem. That the problem is that students are misidentification of us, what we are, compared to ChatGPT, because they're saying, well, we're not very personal and friendly. We don't want to talk about be their therapist essentially. And so I said, this is a UX problem. So I brought it to everyone at the class and said it's a UX problem. Everyone kind of agreed, and they're all like, yeah, this is a UX problem. And I said, best way to solve it is with microlearning. Teach them what ChatGPT is, or what Claude is, what chatbots are. There's sycophantic, things that you can sit there and isolate with. And, this is not healthy, right? We don't want to do that because we always want to send kids back to an adult, guidance counselor, whoever it is. And instead of isolating. And the best part is that yesterday, finally, after, everyone agreeing to this, we got an extension, and we're now going to introduce next week on Thursday, the microlearning into a grade 11 class for the last 3-4 periods of like the classroom sessions.
I look forward to hearing your report about how that goes. That's going to be a controversial experiment. You're going to have the parents pissed on one hand, the students pissed on the other, and the administrators pissed on the third hand. So you're going to be dealing with
I'd like to say that, but that's actually not the case, because the way I did it was very much strategically sound, because I used the credibility of, Jai Jwal in his UX class. And I talked to the teachers, and everyone has gotten this signed off on. And the credibility that came from the BCCDC, and the fact that that district itself, 50 or 60 staff have taken that training, done a lot on training in the last month or whatever it's been. So they know who I am. They're like, okay, this guy is great at, getting FOIPA level compliance, microlearning into action. And so that level of credibility really helps. So the controversy is just that we're going to try maybe 5 or 6 modules, and that's going to be just part of like the onboarding process. And then it's great because I think that's going to be fantastic.
I think you are I think you're in for a big wake up call, dude. If you think that your personal credibility with FOIPA stuff or Jai Jwal's personal credibility with Capilano stuff is going to ingratiate you to the students around learning AI, you are missing the mark, man. Like, they're going to be pissed.
I understand. So one of the biggest problems that we had was, well, there's not enough cognitive space in their brains to, accept that there's a lesson to be learned about, what, fact checking and all these kinds of things that go along with something like a chatbot in classrooms, right? But nobody wants a chatbot in their classroom. Nobody wants porn in their classroom. ChatGPT is the porn of, AI. And so like you should also deal with these problems on a level which in schools you can say, this is bad, don't use porn. Here's why not. Here's how you can avoid it. That's the
Yeah.
point. Is like
Mhm.
is that
Okay.
there's no actual UX concern because they took away that entire UX concern because we made onboarding the app something different.
I feel like
And
this is a Dilbert cartoon. I'm in marketing and you're
anyway, I
engineering,
just want
and
to
you're
say,
just not hearing me. So that's fine. You're like,
no,
oh, I fixed the user.
what,
That's a user interface problem, Chris. I'm like, no, it's not a user. David,
Chris,
we have to move on.
I just want to say one last thing. It is a UX problem.
Great.
That's because it is. It's a really important problem. I'm going to say yes. I'm glad it's a UX problem.
We're just going to do a 10-second poll before we move on. If you think that AI adoption amongst youth is a UX problem, raise your hand. If you think it's not a UX problem, if it has to do with something else, raise your hand. So anyway, just informal poll.
You notice my hands raised.
My problem.
But you just told me you thought it was a UX problem.
Yeah,
that
but
you
you
solved.
can't get AI safety into the classroom unless you subvert it somehow. It's like, yeah, it's a UX problem. It's easy to get in there. At least we'll have some numbers coming back this year from a high school.
Yeah.
That's
That's
all
amazing.
I want.
You should definitely not interpret my pushback as being critical of your ideas or you personally. I'm very supportive of what you're up to. I'm just trying to understand that edge, or whatever. So please report back. Talk at the next AI and education group about your pilot.
Yeah, I am. So Swati's
Okay.
behind. So.
We got like 4 minutes left, so we're gonna do a modified version of what we usually do. Some people come here to share something where other people just talk when their name is called. So all of us who talk when our name is called, we're not going to talk today. If you came here with something to share, you got 30 seconds. Michael, what are you launching this week?
Oh shit. I thought you didn't see me here. After all this, I don't know if I want to talk anymore.
No problem.
Brother,
No problem.
I'll just say I really
if you don't got nothing to say, go back to mute.
No, I mean I do. I'll just give you the URL. I'll just talk. You know me. I'll talk forever. I launched a new project yesterday. Sounds like probably the worst possible time, but whatever. Project7430.com.
Please drop the URL in. Michael follows the Islamic faith. He's done some readings and some numerology. He's come up with some theories, and he's built a really cool, weird visualization tool around Islamic numerology that he's launching this week. How's that for a high-level overview? I'm going to say...
Sorry, I muted myself. You told me to. I mean, that's like part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. Some people will like that part. Some people will like other parts. I don't know anymore, dude. I need a vacation. It's been 8 years of this, man. 8 years of just doing this and behind. I didn't tell a lot of people, and I'm gonna out you, Chris. Like you were the first person to really take me seriously. So thank you so much.
Yeah, man. No problem.
Yeah.
Simon, you got something to share?
Yeah, a very quick update. We had the life sciences, second life sciences group this time and this week, and it's very different to other groups. I think there's a very active focus in what we're trying to achieve, but a different way of delivering it around my table, basically. We had David venting on his experience of AI. He is patient zero. He's brilliant in the life sciences space, and it linked straight into our discussion about whether AI is a good thing or bad thing in the medical profession for the doctors on the front line. That's going to end up with a piece that we're writing for how people should be engaging as patients with this technology, as well as our global stuff as well. We've had this week with Life Sciences BC, and the AI lack of knowledge is still absolutely astounding in that environment. It sounds like, life sciences is moving away from this group and then coming back to this group all the time, and it's interesting for me that the way that's happening. But the patient stuff, whereby patients are getting worse outcomes by learning their diseases and self-diagnosing using AI, is dreadful. We have got the most vulnerable people are reading 43 diagnoses of their condition. 42 of them say they've got the common cold. One says they've got Ebola, and guess which one they stick to? They then turn up at the doctor's office and describe the symptoms they've read for what they think they've got. So the doctor's sitting there thinking, I can't trust the patient now to tell me what is going on. And that Lord of the universe status of a doctor is now being completely undermined. And so the doctor's worst fear is that the word from the patient is the word really. So the doctor goes through the detail, does the diagnosis, tells the patient what's happening, and the patient says, really? Because they've read better and they've read diagnosis number 43, even though it disagrees with all the rest. So there is a amazing piece that we're putting together with this disparate group about the how should you as a patient engage with this technology to make it better? Because at the moment, the outcomes are getting worse for some as a result of it rather than better. That's my rant for this week. I'm in deep stress because my business has got massive upside, massive downside throwing at me all the time. This could be, I could be the richest or the poorest man on the call by next week. We'll see. Enough.
Oh man.
Oh, and what do we do with the creativity, Chris? That's the other thing. We're all too focused on spreadsheets. This group has been brilliant in its widest sense with music and art and film and all the rest. We need to keep that going in our groups. And so I have a problem with this. And how do we embrace it? But again, microphone on mute.
You did such a nice job pulling these events together. They're awesome. They're high quality. They're sweet. You had everyone singing together. I heard from like 10 people of the 20 that were at your house how good of experience they had. Like personally, they emailed me. Good job. And we have a bit of a women problem. We only had two women at our 20-person roundtable this time. The previous time it was half and half. So if you know women in the life sciences who are doctors interested in AI, CEOs, healthcare pros, make a point of pointing them out to us because we all challenged ourselves to invite a female person to the next one so that our credibility can be restored.
Yeah, no, David vented beautifully as well. As I say, he's a great case study for us. He's very, very useful to catalyze the discussion.
Well, when I'm on fumes, so yeah.
Would anyone else like the floor, Alex, before we throw to Zaro?
I'm good. I really don't have much to share. I'm just here very intensely listening and puppy sitting.
Other
Alex, you need 30 seconds?
No, I'm good. David, do you guys have a plan to move it to like a larger venue just so, we don't steal a seat from someone that's more academic to the discussion?
No.
You mean for the life sciences one?
Not in the short term, but we will.
We're trying to mesh the intensity we get out of that intimate gathering with a wider setting, and so we're going to end up doing both. Is the answer?
Yeah, I mean, you know what, Simon? In light of Alex's question, I almost encourage you to like have a gander with Loki at some point about how he has both kept his monthly meetup to only 20 people, but he's grown his active community of Mac people to 300 people or whatever. And so there's got to be a way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We need the people at the table to represent a slice of that and to activate and communicate.
I'm Mr. Inclusive Big Circle thing, but at the end of the day, I sit around Simon's house with 20 physicians and talk about AI life sciences. And so there's got to be like I'm trying to figure that part out. But Alex, I defer to Simon ultimately in the end, but exceptional superstars who want to come pop their head in for one time, I think would be welcome, even if they don't identify with biology or chemistry. So I think there's probably a seat for you at some dinner in the future.
There is indeed.
Yeah. Anyone else need to talk today?
This was a good one. This was a very conversational one. Right. Yeah. I think we already touched on on part of the rent today. And I think that bringing from the spiritual war phase into today, it's the cost thing. It's what John pointed out. It's the 1st of June. It's where the Uber COO and the Uber CEO are starting to publicly talk about is this worth it? Like after the whole and you know what? Fuck this timing, man, because I just got a job in the corporate world with the corporate Codex account. And yeah, like the impact was immediate on all of these big global, corporations that were starting to use AI. And then the shift of sentiment and, the inclusion of the spiritual side of it and the cost of it, it's always going to come back to the cost of it. And I'm just sad because it feels again like when the internet was coming up, we had time, as pioneers of the internet that were out there playing on BBSs and Merc and whatever. We had time. We created an infrastructure. We created a book of ethical use. We created by socializing, by community, like it was real. We were doing it together. Like we had best standards. We saw a cool GeoCities web page and we would copy and we would talk to them and etc. But we didn't have that time with AI. That's what I'm feeling. It's like we onboarded everybody really quickly and people did the most logical, closest, easiest fucking thing possible. They turned AI into Google search. And that is a fucking token nightmare. And now we're seeing a token nightmare on corporate models. And now we're seeing, like, and now people are dependent as well because they're like, well, this Google search is a little bit better because it generates something back to me in a way that I can be productive.
Yeah.
Big air quotes with it. But the cost of it, Chris, it's always going to come back to it. Like now, the cost is coming back to us. And that's a problem because when we were starting the Merc and the internet and we were pioneering the new ethics and the infrastructure that for the people that were to come, you know, we had that. We don't have that now. And people won't have that anymore. So for a few months, all of us here in this call, we were enjoying that democracy, that pioneer moment. We were all like busting agents and using three models at once. We're not anymore. Like that's crazy that a month changed that reality, So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting moment and seeing the government coming up with stuff. I didn't want to bring everything down, but like it's part of the rent. It's like, are we going through a roller coaster, of emotions again? It's just one of those moments. So I'm interested to see what's next, man.
Yeah, I look forward to continue this conversation because I don't want to continue this call, but I do have some things to say. So we'll get onto it more soon. Thank you all for showing up. Thanks for being here. Keep your eyes on Future Proof. I've been making some big moves. I'm going to do some speaker announcements next week. I just lined up our third out of town speaker who said yes, kind of just based on reputation. So I'm excited. I'm trying to keep cards close to my chest and also share at the same time. So we'll see, but keep your eyes on that. And, if it's easy and within your means, sign up when you can. And otherwise, we'll figure that rest of that stuff out later.